Cultic is an indie retro FPS. It looks like and plays like it could be the spiritual successor to Blood, but is it good enough to live up to the title? Let's find out. Cultic has been developed by just one dude, Jason Smith. It's a boomer shooter retro FPS which takes lots of inspiration from Blood, from the likeness of the enemies to the inclusion of dynamite sticks that can be thrown and shot, or lit and thrown directly in the face of enemies. Shooting mechanics, pacing, gore, explosions, physics, careful dosage of enemy numbers per encounter, and the art style are on point. These are the features that make Cultic stand out. The first map will blow you away. While it's a 3.5 hours long solid ride, for these reasons alone, there are some other aspects that lower the overall quality of the experience, and some others that are just downright annoying as you progress further in the game. It's up to you to decide if they can be forgiven. Cultic excels in close quarters. Throwing a dynamite stick just around the corner as the dumb enemies approach you is always fun, just like it was in Blood. But then we have, much later in the game, for example, the excavation map, which is one of the few arena-style shooter maps. The game here forces you to slow down and think your next move. The only safe way to go about it is to cover the arena from left to right and advance carefully. That's how I got through without a scratch the first time, but it was a little boring. Still, it didn't hurt to switch tactics for a bit. Still boring though. Asset reuse is intelligently camouflaged, but it does bring about the typical wariness of seeing the same things over and over again, especially in the first half of the game. New game mechanics are introduced, like sniping for example, but you have the feeling sometimes that you're constantly playing in the same sandbox, whether it's in a forest, a mine, or a generic rundown building. The absolute best is presented in the very first map, where you see all three for the first time, at the same time. Towards the end you'll find yourself in old temples, but that's about it. Exploration is rewarded with secrets. Thankfully, you can move around faster by sliding around, which makes traversal much faster. The cultists are fun to fight. Hitting them with a headshot usually means they're done for, usually. The hovering telekinetic enemies are just annoying. They throw objects at you, and while they do so, you're immobilized and the screen shakes. They deal a lot of damage too. They go down quick, if you're able to figure out where the hell they are. Sometimes they're on the floor above, and you can see them at all. AI is quite dumb, so if you're in a tight spot, you can always cheese it. There are other enemies with different weapons that are more or less shielded from your attacks, mini-bosses that can be quite moronic, and a couple of unremarkable bosses stolen from other games. I got random freezes throughout my first gameplay. I also got them while recording a playthrough for the demo a little while ago. It was OBS recording at 60 FPS messing it up. Then I tried playing the first level again without recording footage, and I just had some stutters. Considering that I recorded the RE4 remake demo a couple of weeks ago with the highest quality settings with no issues whatsoever, the problem is likely with Cultic optimization, so if you have a slower PC than mine, you might encounter FPS drops. Going up and down stairwells need to be done carefully or you're going to fall again and again. Level design can be confusing, some elements are easy to miss. The peak of confusing level design was the labyrinth garden. I didn't see that an automatic checkpoint was saved, so I didn't know if there was just a secret to be found here, or some item to advance. The inclusion of a map would have helped in previous levels, and the labyrinth it would have defeated the purpose of having a labyrinth in the first place, of course. But it wasn't fun. I had been dreading throughout the game having to encounter a twofold path because of how confusing the design was. Most of the times I would have found myself on the right track by what seemed pure luck, so I wouldn't say that the level design is awful, it just didn't click as good as it did for other titles that I have played in the past. This was an issue also on all titles where key items blended a little too much with the rest of the environment. I'm just saying this would have also benefited from some modernization. Another issue I see with the game was the total lack of humor, and I don't mean it should have got past a level of ridiculousness, but Blood pulled humor off quite nicely, and it helped you get out of the constantly bleak atmosphere. Bullet time is activated at random times. It's triggered by killing random specific enemies. While it's useful on one hand because you can aim and shoot other enemies while it's on, it slows down the pace of the game since you have no control over when or why it happens. This is the first game I've ever played where I've been annoyed by bullet time. I feel the game would have benefited by not featuring it at all, or at least letting the player choose when to use it. The game is not very cinematic to begin with, even if sometimes it tries. That always inevitably falls flat on its face, except for the first introduction to the chainsaw dude, also present in the demo. Bait and switch much. The story is basically non-existent. There's a cult, and that's it. There are some journals scattered all over the place. The writing isn't very interesting. I forced myself to read them, but I really didn't want to. Some menu sound effects remind me of Silent Hill. Was it just a tribute? Or was there a desire to make the game more of a survival horror? The epic synthwave soundtrack was out of place. Not every indie game needs to be Hotline Miami. I feel like music was chosen more out of personal taste than what would have fit the atmosphere. Many times, the up-tempo music will continue playing as no action was happening. Which in turn made music basically noise for the continuation of the game. The biggest culprit is most likely the Asylum Grounds map. I considered switching music off permanently, but I wanted to give it the benefit of the doubt, in case it would have gotten better, for the sake of the review. And guess what? There's also survival mode with waves of enemies, but they don't offer unlockables. The progression doesn't feel satisfying. Enemies are thrown at you, you try to upgrade your weapons as you go, set a high score, but that's about it. Again, I don't feel like Cultic does the arena thing well. I didn't enjoy much, so I quit after the second wave. If Cultic had had better level design, some humor, and better music, it would have been a worthy spiritual successor to Blood, the game it's heavily influenced by. Cultic is a teenager emulating his favorite rockstar. It's got potential and it's promising. It has its personal charm, but needs to mature a little bit and show more substance from a game design standpoint. It's good, but it has its flaws. Is it worth playing? Yeah, maybe you'll be more entertained than annoyed. To me it was 50-50, which kills the replayability factor for me, except for the first few maps. I hope there will be Cultic 2 and that it'll address those issues. That's it. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, more reviews are coming in the following weeks. Thanks for watching.